Over the past 5 years, I've dedicated myself to building as much muscle and sculpting my dream physique to the best ability I possibly can. And over this time, I've been able to gain over 60 pounds of lean body mass, but it was never as simple as that. I struggled to make progress. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I never really had much confidence in what I was doing, and I didn't see the results that I should have seen. And now looking back at it, it is very obvious as to why that was. The only thing I was focused on in the gym was lifting heavier. I was fixated on lifting heavier every session and trying to lift as heavy as I possibly could, because I always thought the heavier you lift, the more progress you are going to make. And so many men in particular who want to build muscle think that. That is one of the reasons why they're not making progress, and that is one of the things that is holding them back. Because in my situation, when I started to live by this and when I started to align my sessions and what I do in the gym with this theory, that is when my progress genuinely started to explode. I started to fill out t-shirts and I started to see drastic changes in my physique. And still to this day, this is what I prioritize and this is what I live by and what I align my training with, and it's still allowing me to make progress to this day. The day where my entire perception around lifting in the gym completely changed was when I did a leg session with one of my older cousins who's been going to the gym for 20 plus years. At that time, it was the very hardest I've ever pushed myself. How I got to the point of throwing up and pushing myself, and to the point where my legs were hurting and I could barely walk without pain for the next week after that, is how my perception around lifting completely changed. And I thought, we're just going to lift heavy, we're just going to do what I usually do. But for example, on some of the exercises, I lifted with less than half of the weight that I would usually lift with at my own gym. And that was the hardest I've ever worked my legs in my entire life, or just in the gym full stop. Now, that's where something occurred to me, that there must be something here as to why I was able to work my legs so well with less than half the weight. Then I sort of realised, okay, heavy weight isn't necessarily what grows muscle, but it's what you do with the weight that grows the muscle. It's through this realisation that I realised the weight is kind of irrelevant. A very quick pit stop. If you are trying to build muscle but you've been struggling for a long period of time and you want more basic information like this, which is going to help you make your first little steps of progress and finally stop spinning your wheels, then I'm going to leave the link to my free community in the top link in the description down below, where we have been seeing people win for over a year and a half now, and why can't you be the next person to do so? The muscle can't see whether you're lifting with 5 pound dumbbells or with 50 pound dumbbells, and the only thing that matters to the muscle, and that the only proper thing the muscle responds to, which causes that adaptation process of muscle growth, is muscle stimulation. It's through what you do with the weight that provides effective stimulation for your muscles. It's not about how heavy you lift. Now, this will make a lot more sense if we go back to the very basics of how muscle growth works and how our body just works overall. Everything that our body does is optimized to survive its surrounding environment. Now, I'll give you guys a fantastic example of this. Let's say you're a footballer, you start running around the pitch all the time. Your cardiovascular system is obviously going to be like, holy shit, we've got to adapt here because I can't currently keep up with this. So that's how someone's cardiovascular endurance improves. And if we go back to what muscle growth is all about, if we're in the gym all the time and we're putting our muscles against resistance, the body's gonna be like, holy shit, okay, we need to adapt to this and we need to make sure we can handle this in the future. And that is how muscle growth works. It's an adaptation process. And you may be asking, Ryan, okay, how do we force our body to adapt, or how do we use this resistance or weight to force our muscles to adapt? Once again, it comes back to that muscle stimulation, stimulating our muscles effectively. So we break down the muscle fibers so they can grow back bigger and stronger next time. Now you may be asking, Ryan, how do we stimulate our muscles? And it all starts with something called mind-muscle connection. And what I mean by this is, if you're doing bicep curls, your brain is going to send signals throughout your body to send blood to this area to support it whilst it is undergoing resistance. The mind-muscle connection is your ability to mentally focus on the muscle during the exercise as much as possible. And I'll give you guys a really good example. So an exercise and a muscle group in general that a lot of people struggle with to establish a mind muscle connection is with their back, and especially on lat pull downs. What happens a lot of the time is people's back muscles don't give up, but it's the arm muscles that give up first. And it's the arms that become so painful, and that's all that the mind can think about, and that is a poor mind muscle connection. However, if we flip that on its head and we look at it from a well established mind muscle connection perspective, that refers to only feeling your back working and not feeling any inclusion from the arms, and fully focusing mentally on the back muscles that are working during the lat pull down. And in order to establish a good mind muscle connection, we need to target the muscle correctly. And what do we need to do in order to target the muscle correctly? Perform the exercise correctly, have good technique, have good form, and this is the entire point that I'm trying to make. Improving that as much as possible, having that as your number one priority, that is what is truly going to grow muscle, because that is how you form mind muscle connection. Therefore, that is how you stimulate your muscles. Therefore, that's how you force them to adapt and grow back bigger and stronger in the future. And it's through that that increasing the weight over time becomes productive, and that you'll actually respond to it positively. Because if you increase the weight without improving your technique, and you don't care about technique and you just care about the number on the dumbbell, then you're not going to stimulate your muscles, but you're just going to hurt your joints and probably risk yourself getting injured in the future and build bad habits with the gym, and you're not necessarily going to make sustainable progress over time. And that is the real secret to success in the gym. It's not about how quickly you can make progress, but it's about how long you can sustain progress being made over time. And it's through technique and prioritizing form and reducing the weight and being careful, being sensible, being mindful with what you do, that you make that sustainable progress over time. And what happens a lot of the time is guys in the gym who are trying to build as much muscle as possible, they lift the heaviest weight they possibly can, and as a consequence, they sacrifice their form and technique for that. Now, that is not what is going to grow you muscle. And a fantastic example of this, going back to that lat pull down exercise right there. I used to lift 3 years ago now with 20 kilos heavier than I currently do, but my back is a lot bigger, and I'll put the progress up on the screen. Now, if that doesn't show you the power of prioritizing technique before prioritizing lifting as heavy as possible, then I don't know what else does. It's not about how heavy you can lift, but it's about making the lightest weight feel as heavy as you possibly can on your muscle, because as I said before, the muscle can't see the number on the dumbbell. That's only going to grow your ego. And this is coming from someone who has benched 315 pounds. I have lifted with 90-pound dumbbells on chest press, but I've scaled back from that and I focus on the more important things, and that is why I've been able to sculpt my physique to what it is today and make this rapid progress I have. And this is why my clients have been able to make so much progress after struggling for so long. And that is why people in my free community are getting results. It's because you need to focus on the things that actually matter over the things that are not going to grow your muscles but grow your ego. And don't get me wrong, this isn't something that I did once for a little bit of time and then I stopped. I'm still doing this to this day. I'm still prioritizing the technique. I have worked with a client, and I'm currently working with a client who felt this way. However, when he started to implement my personal feedback on his technique after sending me some videos, he then messaged me the other day saying, oh wow, I actually had to reduce the weight because of the tips that you gave me. And it's through this realization, and it's through putting your ego to a side for a second, that you can actually make progress with the thing that matters the most, the muscle. That is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment down below. I want to hear your thoughts as well, and drop a subscription if you want to stay around. Now, throughout this video, I mentioned that I've been working with clients and that they've been seeing results through implementation of this strategy. Now, if you've been struggling to gain weight and you've been struggling to build muscle for some time and you're spinning your wheels and you don't necessarily have that guidance, then I'm going to leave a link to my one-on-one application in the top link in the description below, where you can work with me and I can help you personally implement the systems and the strategies and the frameworks that I've been talking about throughout this video, which is going to help you get your priorities right in the gym so you can grow some damn muscle and start making some proper changes.